healthy from the game last night, or were you set to go tonight?
Yeah, I mean, everybody feels pretty good. So that's good. Because we had, Avery was a little bit under the weather last night, but I thought played through it and said he feels a lot better. And Jay hasn't expressed any issues.
Coach, Detroit has had some issues staying in front of Isaiah on the perimeter, but you guys also have had some issues keeping their guys out of the paint. What do you guys need to change to be able to slow down their perimeter players?
Well, I think I just said to Sean Grandy, I think Reggie Jackson's one of the toughest guys in pick and rolls in the whole league to guard, due to a number of factors. Number one is his talent, his skill. And then with Drummond rolling to the front of the rim surrounded by shooting, it makes it very difficult. It's easier said than done to keep guys in front of him when you're running into closeouts all the time because you have to help on that rim roller.
Brad, last night you played the second unit pretty much the entire fourth quarter. I mean, what gives you the faith to do that in a close game?
Well, that game was one of those games where, there weren't a lot of stoppages. We were scoring, and even when they were scoring, we were answering it. When we didn't score, we'd got to stop, and it just kind of stayed at a 8 to 10 point game most of the time after it was 81-77. And we, just were executing well. Guys looked like they had a good feel for the rhythm of the game and felt good about it. So it made sense to let those guys go.
How has Evan been a key to that unit? Really, he's kind of been the one constant in that unit all year, even through the injuries, in terms of being kind of almost seems like the glue guy in that unit.
Well, I think the one of the great things about Evan, and we've talked about it before, is he's a jack of all trades, because that not only benefits you as a player, but it benefits the coach in deciding who you can play with because you've got more options. If you don't have any versatility, then you're pretty much stuck with who you can play with from a positional standpoint. But if you can play a couple of different spots, if you can play with the ball, if you can post a little bit, then it gives you a couple of different options with who he can play with. And then he got going in the pick and roll, which he did for us. He's done for us a lot in the last 2 years, but he really got going last night. And he and Tyler have a nice synergy. And so it just made sense to kind of roll with that.
Jerebko's shooting the three a lot better since he joined the Celtics than he did in Detroit. Why do you think that?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I mean, I think he's put a lot of time into shooting. I thought this offseason he really put a lot of time into it. And that was kind of his focus. But he, he's a good shooter. And, we played him mostly at the 4. They probably played him at the 3 a little bit more. But, he's always been a guy that's been very capable. But certainly he's, he has figured out that that's going to be where his bread is buttered, is spacing the floor and being a guy that can drive closeouts but knocking down open shots.
He's shooting a career high for 3-point percentage. He's shooting a career low for 2-point percent. Have you looked at film or anything? Any reason why that's the case?
I just think some of his twos have been a little bit tougher. He shot it pretty well in the last 10 games or so. He's getting a lot more dives to the rim and finishes that way. But early in the season, a couple of them were probably just a little bit tougher. And then, he doesn't shoot a high enough volume that it really is probably worth overanalyzing from a sample size standpoint.
Coach, can we expect to see more of Tyler Zero like we saw last night tonight, or is that more of a Knicks matchup type of thing?
I think you definitely could. We'll see how the game plays out.
Coach, you're talking a lot to Tyler. He had so many DNPs. Is that something you had on your list to do to keep him engaged?
Number one is I've got a lot of respect for all the guys in the locker room and how much work they put in, and you want everybody to have that opportunity in those moments, and you want it to happen more often than not. You can only play 5 on a given night. I'm really happy for him that he made the most of it, and we don't win the game without him last night. But as far as just being, he'll stay engaged regardless. I think that's the kind of person he is.
Brad, this will be your third, trade deadline as a head coach. How have you learned to sort of manage balancing the guys' focus on the game and kind of zone and blocking out all the noise?
I think that's probably the guys that have been in the league longer probably feel a lot like I do. It's like we're just all listening and laughing and trying to figure out what's real and what's not, but not putting a lot of stock into it until somebody knocks on our door. You know, and that's the way I feel about it. You know, I probably followed up on every third rumor my first year, and I don't think I've followed up on one yet. So, Danny wants to talk to me about something, he knows where to find me.
Have
Well,
you
for
not
the
had any
younger guys-
conversations with Danny?
We talk generally, but there's, you know,
Nothing
nothing
specific.
specific.
What about for the younger guys? Do you sort of maybe call them aside and say, hey, you know, like this is how I would deal with, you know, these types of rumors?
I mean, I think if you go through and try to stay on top of every rumor that's flying around, I mean, maybe you mention it in one setting, but I don't think our guys put a lot of stock into it, to be honest. It's part of the business. We all recognize it's part of the business. But we're all focused and preparing to play a good Detroit team. And there's so many games, and there's so little time to prepare for the games. It's really hard to get sidetracked. Certainly you're not always going to play your best. Certainly there's always distractions. But if you let distractions creep into you while you're playing, you'll play poorly.
Is it a little different though, Brad, this year because your team is in a much different place as we look upon this trade deadline than the first couple?
Not for me. I mean, like I said, for me, from the standpoint of, you know, I'm not really, I'm not losing sleep over, you know, what might happen, what's not going to happen, what's not real, what's real, you know, any of that stuff. I'm just, you know, coaching our team and focused on our team, and, you know, if something happens, it happens. But, you know, we've had stability all the way throughout this year. We've started to play better, although we've been pretty consistent in our effort and our defense most of the year. Started to play a little bit better offensively at times, and, you know, our goal is just to keep getting better. And, you know, anything that detracts from that or distracts from that is something that's not worth thinking about.
Last year, right before the trade deadline, after you guys had made a bunch, you kind of said a couple of times, kind of like there to be not too many trades going forward. How has that continuity helped this year?
Well, I mean, and that was hard on even the trade deadline day. I mean, you know, it was exciting from the standpoint of having a chance to acquire Isaiah and acquire Jonas and acquire Gigi, but, you know, we felt we really liked Marcus and we really liked Tayshaun. I mean, we liked where that team was going with how they were playing from about the middle of January on. So I just think the more continuity and stability that you have, the more that you can kind of build a corporate knowledge of what you're trying to do. And it's not going to stay that way forever. Certainly you're going to have change, but the more you can minimize it, the better. And I think, you know, I don't know how Stan would feel about that, but it sure seems the way that they're going about that team and the building process of that team sure seems consistent with that.